we are all well acquainted. There we go. And so this is me. This was 4 years, 3.5 years ago. Took this picture. I'm not the proudest of it. It's not my favorite picture. But it was really just a prelude of sort of the times to come, I felt like. As far as the wonderful experiences that I've had here, definitely some difficult times, as Ben just said, doing what we do every day, right? A lot of challenges that we face each and every day. But overall, it's been a very rewarding experience. And if I had to do it again, I would certainly come right back here to Kings County and SUNY Downstate to be with you all and to serve the patients that we serve each and every day. And with that said, I have a lot of thanks. First of them being, of course, Dr. Smith, as she was instrumental in helping me put this presentation together. So I definitely want to extend my thanks to her for all of the pointers that she gave. And also, of course, Christine and Amani, one, for them putting up with me each and every day. You might not believe it, but I think I can be a lot to deal with at home. And Christine and Amani are just amazing and there to support me each and every day, and I really appreciate that. This is my mother. Just so many words that I have that I can't even say exactly how thankful I am for everything that she's provided for myself, my family, my siblings, but also a number of other thank yous. Dr. Gore, in addition to thanking him, every time I see him, I congratulate him for something that he's accomplished, some new award that he's gotten. Dr. Rennert, I also want to thank Dr. Gernsheimer for being there as a mentor, also discussing career advice, career options. Miss Margaret for praying for me each and every day. Just having someone, another person in my corner to encourage me and support me as I go on. Of course, our Kings County team, we got Dia in there and Rich. This is Miss Holiday, who just always a wonderful person to run into each and every morning as we come to work. And of course, we got Clarence and Blue here, you know, definitely got to thank them. So many, many thanks over and over again. See, we got Janice Clark in there, yes. Of course, Dr. Willis working in tandem, bringing me to the conference each and every week. It's just been amazing to have his support. This is a very challenging. The guys that nourished me on many a late night during our shifts in the main. So yes, many thanks over. We also have Miss Brown in there and also Miss Morris. And it continues. All right, and finally, of course, my colleagues, my classmates in the class of 2018, thank you for, once again, just this being such a wonderful experience. And hopefully this is not the end. I'm not saying goodbyes, right? We're gonna continue our relationships, our friendships as we go forward. And of course, the rest of the residency program, thank you all. So we're gonna move on. This is my favorite saying. I think anybody that's worked with me probably heard me say this each and every shift, right? Teamwork makes the dream work. As corny as it sounds, I believe it's one of the biggest truisms on the planet. But I said, look, you know what? I'm gonna take the challenge and try to figure out if this is actually true, if this is something that has any sort of basis, right? In terms of scientific grounding, that this is the case, right? We can say it all day. It sounds good, if you ask me, but let's take a deep dive. And so this is actually done in terms of nurse-physician teamwork in the emergency department, basically looking at whether or not this is something that improves our job environment, our autonomy, our ability basically to function in the ED. A lot of Likert scores, I just want to get that out there. Likert scales today, everyone aware of what that is? Strongly disagree, strongly agree, and so on. So yes, a lot of social science studies. But we can see here, so this actually was a study that was done, numerous EDs in which they took groups of physicians and nurses, a set of EDs, which they had individuals undergo teamwork training, and then they had another group which just basically did what they wanted to do in their daily functions in the emergency department. Now, they had about 171 individuals in the group in which they actually had the teamwork training, and there were about another 270. It kind of makes sense, right? Not that many people willing to put up with this. But what they found was that, you can see here, as far as job environment, in the interventional group, we see higher scores, right, correlated with that training and with that teamwork method, and we see in the control groups lesser. Same thing in terms of their autonomy, their ability to function autonomously in the emergency department, not being watched over by your supervisor, not being hounded by your charge nurse. We see that the scores are actually higher. And then finally, control over their practice. Again, going with that autonomy in the emergency department and being able to function on your own, and thus having a more palatable work environment. We see that these scores are higher in the interventional group. And this was actually tracked over the course of 2 years, in which they continuously reassessed the cohorts and found that the individuals that did undergo the training actually maintained those scores throughout. Among the things that they did as far as the teamwork training was send them on retreats, actually had individuals hang out outside of the clinical environment, sort of interacting with each other on more personal levels to build that teamwork and that camaraderie going forward. And this is something I think we can definitely bring to our emergency department. We've been in talks talking about doing things like town hall meetings, engaging our colleagues in the ancillary staff, right, to improve our relations and so that we can get to this level. And I think it's certainly possible, but I know you got the skeptics out there. I see it on people's faces like, come on, Mo, really? You decided to bring this to us? And yes, so right, typical APOD shift. What is this expression for anyway? This is for me, the urine, right? I went to get the urine, as we talked about earlier, efficiency, but she just used the bathroom. How many times, right? Any other frustrations anybody can think of? Patients hounding you for discharge favors?
Blood is collected.
What was that?
Blood is collected and walk over and still
and it's still, yeah, there we go, exactly, yes. No canisters around, right? Numerous frustrations. Anyone else? Okay, and then this is by sign out time, right? Which you're walking out just pissed, not having a good time. And this is not enjoyable. As we talked about in the previous talk, this could be pretty stress inducing, right? And it can also impede our ability to function, especially when we talk about teamwork and working together in the emergency department. Even amongst ourselves as co-residents, it can make things much more difficult. Now switching gears, the fix, right? How can we address this? So now I'm going to get really mushy on you all. And thank you, Ben, for your perfect segue actually towards the end of your presentation for this. Because this is actually coming from the Harvard Business Review. This young lady, Emma Sapala, actually a specialist in terms of teamwork and emotional dynamics in work environments, and actually published this article talking about, rather than doing what we typically do, right? When we talk about these problems, fostering teamwork, fostering camaraderie in work environments, we talk about doing things like sending down policies, right? Or making things more efficient. We're gonna make more policies, we're gonna have more meetings, we're going to do more root cause analyses, things of that nature. They said basically what we need to do, or what we can do potentially to improve the culture and improve the work environment, is actually focus on positive emotions. So we increase the positive emotions, we actually buffer against negative events, and then finally we attract and bolster new employees. And this is all based on the research of a gentleman by the name of Kim Cameron, one of the big names in this field, which is actually a burgeoning field. Just learned about it, positive organizational scholarship, which we talk about bringing positivity to various workplaces, and including healthcare settings. And this is something that's been pretty profound as far as the developments since 2003. Mostly they actually have a Center for Positive Organizational Scholarship at Michigan, University of Michigan. And basically they performed a study to sort of prove this, right? Whether or not we can actually change organizational culture and improve organizational productivity through doing these things. All of these sort of positive practices at work. So being respectful, right? Having integrity development, also working on positive affect. So individuals expressing their satisfaction and looking at each other's well-being, and also positive individual behavior. We can see that these have actually been confirmed. Numerous studies over the years that have confirmed these at the individual levels. However, as far as organizational effectiveness and making change within our organization, was not proven until this study was done. And what they did was they actually took groups of individuals in the financial industry So about 40 business units in a large financial firm here in the Northeast, and 29 nursing units in which they basically looked at these positive predictors in these two separate groups. And obviously we would expect more positive emotions, right? More positive feelings to be grounded in the healthcare setting versus in the business setting. We would expect to have less of that, right? They're focused on profits, they're focused on that bottom line. And so we would expect that they would have much less as far as those scores. But going forward, they actually they did a score in which they used the Likert scores to develop a scoring system that focused on, I lost my word. They used this scoring system to develop a scorecard that would track these individuals over time, similar to the previous study. So during the first year, they actually looked at individuals in the different groups and asked them things like, okay, how do you feel about your work environment? How would you grade your interactions with your bosses on a daily basis, right? How do you feel about staying here over the long term? Is this a job that you plan on staying in? And basically they separated this into six positive domains in which they track these scores. So being compassionate, right? Or being caring in your environment. They asked a number of different questions that sort of correlated to this, and then they would score that similar to compassionate support. So whether or not, if an individual is struggling in your work environment, right, are individuals there to support them? Are there programs to make sure that that individual can keep up with the rest of the group? Forgiveness, right? If someone makes a mistake, are they judged? Or are there ways in which they can remedy or remediate that individual to make sure that they get up to snuff and actually get the job done? Also, whether or not individuals are inspiring in a work environment, and whether or not there's meaning to the work being done. So they asked about 129 questions per group that address these different areas, and then tracked that over time to see what the scores were, and then correlated that to the productivity in those different fields. So for instance, in the financial services, right, we're looking at profits, whether or not the organization was profitable. They looked at the executive assessments of the organization to see what they're in the different departments, to see if they were actually productive and if they agreed that the sector or that particular department was running well. And that's it. And this was another positive predictor that was tracked as well. And so, with all of that said, this is the person I think of when we talk about all of this stuff. Dr. Gernsheimer's motto, anyone? Be nice. Be nice. That's what it boils down to. If we're talking about changing this culture, right, and sort of grounding our culture here at Kings County and Sweet Downstate in positive emotions, this is the band that sort of is the shining star of that, the shining star example of it. Expressing, as we said, the caring, right, the compassion that we need on a daily basis. Forgiveness for mistakes. There's times where I've made mistakes as a resident, and being able to say, okay, you made a mistake, I'm going to teach you now, right? I'm going to let you know, like, this is how we maybe should have done that, or this is an alternative way of doing things, and sort of building you up rather than judging you. This is the person that embodies all of that, so definitely wanted to make that shout out. But what they did find was that through having this intervention, and basically what they did was, for the business services group, for instance, they sent them on a retreat, right? And all the executives, all the leadership in there, in order to encourage this change in culture, sent them on retreats, had them meet with positive emotion coaches, and then they would sort of go over things like how to address an individual that has made an error in their work, and worked to make to encourage these positive culture changes in those organizations. And they did a similar thing with the healthcare institutions, the nursing units that were involved in the study. And what they found is that these positive practices in these organizations actually led to those benefits that we talked about: increased patient care satisfaction scores, also increased profits and productivity in the financial industries that were assessed with this study. And these mechanisms, they identify these mechanisms as being sort of the reasons why this actually works. And one being an amplifying effect, in which basically if I'm nice to you, right, if I greet you on a daily basis, you cannot frown at me. At some point you're gonna break. And I've done this before. Janice Clark is my example. That you wear them down, right? You kill them with kindness. And this has an amplifying effect in that it catches on to other individuals, because you get that reciprocated back in 99% of the cases that will reciprocate back. Also, we have a buffering effect in which negative events or negative occurrences in certain environments, in these work environments, right? We have this buffering effect where that does not impact the morale of everyone. So for instance, a patient that becomes difficult, right? And we have to, maybe sometimes they're verbally abusive to us. They can be even physically abusive potentially, right? Not letting that sort of degrade the positive emotions that we're exuding when we come to work, right? Because we need to stay positive, as we said in the previous presentations, that we are under a significant burden and stress when it comes to dealing with a lot of the issues that we deal with at the emergency department. So this buffering effect, and then finally this heliotrope effect, which is sort of a collective of all of these, in that basically this is the belief that human nature, or this social interaction, this positive interaction, then leads to sort of an organizational flow towards positivity, right? No matter what, as far as the goals of the organization is concerned. And then finally, we see here that we finally achieved that organizational effectiveness, and downstate and county wins. So I think this is certainly possible, and this is something that we can definitely work towards. And I think it starts with us as residents, sort of going forward. And each and every day when we show up to work, it's difficult, right? But engaging one another, right? Asking how your day was, how you're doing, engaging our coworkers that way, our ancillary staff, our nurses, knowing their names, and not being judgmental or critical of some of the things that might happen. Maybe there was a reason why the UCG wasn't sent, right? We just can't judge and say that everybody's dragging their feet, because just my experience and sort of being here for the last 7.5 years is that I think the vast majority of us are working as hard as we can on a daily basis, right? Us, our colleagues, in radiology, the radiology techs, I see them running, scrambling to get patients all the time. CT is a different story. I'm not gonna talk some of the techs, case by case. But I think the vast majority of us are working as hard as we can. And as we said, our resources are always strained, right? So we have to take that into account, but always try to be positive, and in the words of Dr. Gerensheimer, going forward, be nice. All right, so we'll move on. Now, next topic, we are dealing with an information crisis right now. I don't know if you know, anybody familiar with this? Comet Pizza, man. I never got to make it, but never got to try it out. But yeah, this is the Comet Pizza fiasco. During the 2016 election, Hillary Clinton apparently had children that were being abused here. Yeah, that's what we're dealing with. That's what's going on. And this is sort of not just a crisis of the political sort, right? We see the political ramifications and what's going on in the world around us, but this is where we have some really severe problems, because this is affecting our patients. And this is something that we need to get at the heart of. This is sort of a danger to society that we need to address. And this is actually posted by Milo. This is on InfoWars, saying things. Now, actually, if you read it, pardon me, I read it, okay? It's pretty funny, actually, some of the stuff he says, but just outright no scientific basis to any of the things that he's saying in this article. And really just an assault on women, right? Women that are just really trying to sort of make decisions for themselves and their body and for their health. But definitely check that out. And this was actually something I stumbled upon, sort of this birth control that is 2% potassium chloride and some other things, some oils that you shove into the vagina and it supposedly gives you, or serves as in, yeah, no. Look at Raul's face, I see it. So this is what we're dealing with. This is the problem that we have to face. Anybody familiar with Goop? You've heard of it? Okay. So this is Gwyneth Paltrow. 2009, along with others, started an organization called Goop, and they actually had the In Goop Health Conference this past January, right here in New York City at the South Street Seaport. And some of the things that they promote actually going forward, these vitamin B injections, this was actually at the conference. Number of other things, these sort of jade eggs that apparently cleanse the vagina. So you insert this egg into the vagina and then somehow, magically, it cleanses it. And obviously we're dealing with the fallout from Andrew Wakefield's article. We all know this, the vaccine controversy. Gastroenterologist, I think because of his British accent, that this sort of caught on, where there was an apparent link to autism in a very small observational study that he performed over in the UK. And we're still dealing with this today. Huge anti-vax movement and sort of some of the stuff that's being perpetuated online, right? There's nothing sort of combating that. One of the major ways in which individuals are getting this information, even if they ask their physicians, a lot of physicians, or primary care physicians, because of the controversy surrounding it, are really hands-off in terms of educating patients about this. So they're letting patients make these decisions. Meanwhile, they're turning to this huge organization, this huge campaign against vaccines online that are loaded with false information and actually posing a danger. We've seen outbreaks in measles, things like pertussis, right, recently because of decreased vaccination rates. And so we're dealing with a major public health issue here. This actually I found, surprisingly, in the third floor of the Health Science Education building by the media department. So this is a real ad for cigarettes, right, years ago. And so we're at the sort of the root of this problem as well. We're not totally absolved from this, some of the misinformation that's out there. And you would think that, okay, this was years ago, right? Cigarette ad and with sort of a physician's endorsements on it. But even today, right, we have some individuals of ourselves that are the culprits of what's going on. This here is Louis Ignarro, actually shared the Nobel Prize in physiology and medicine with Robert Furchgott. Everybody familiar with Robert Furchgott? Nitric oxide. Okay, so he's actually SUNY Downstate's Nobel laureate, 1998. Shared the prize with this gentleman who, see this watch, right? So he stepped his game up, I guess, I don't know. Was approached by Herbalife folks and said, let's make this compound, this medication or supplement rather, called Nightworks, in which he strongly endorses, right? And actually went to do even research on mice and try to extrapolate that to people like, oh, if it works in mice, it actually works in humans. And basically what they found was that there was a small percentage of atherosclerotic plaque in the aortas of these mice. And he actually endorsed this and saying, oh, thus this product works. So we are at the root of the problem as well. And then obviously some of the negative media portrayal of physicians sort of skew things with real problems that we're dealing with, right, in terms of burnout, substance abuse resulted from that, but sort of a skewed perception in the media based on how we are sort of shown in common media sources here. So how do we do this, right? We're not nerds, I'm sorry guys, I couldn't think of a better headline. So this is where we got to take our stand, basically. We need a revolution in information, basically. And one of the things that's interesting is that despite what I believe that actually going into this was that we're still relatively trusted as far as professionals in the United States and North America. we're still pretty high up there in terms of trust. Somehow the military actually beat us in terms of being trusted a great deal. I don't know how that happened. But overall, you can see here that we are trusted a lot more. We are pretty much at the top of the heap in terms of medical scientists, medical professionals being trusted by the public. And with that said, we do have an opportunity, I feel. And moving on, we can do this in some of the ways that we do it regularly, which we go into the community and we sort of lecture and talk to the community about different health challenges, different health things. But then also we have other opportunities, right, as far as radio. We have other broadcast opportunities, podcasting that we can do, even television, social media, and if you really want to get out there, just get on a soapbox and have a bullhorn. So it all really depends on your personality. Sometimes your style might come into play as far as what you might choose and how you're going to do this. You like that picture, Olu? No. Our various talents, which he had a lot of talent. I was going to use a lot of stuff from Brian, but this one was cool. We got Ned and Brian. And also just in terms of our quirks or eccentricities, we'll say. So I asked him to explain this, and when he did, I was like, you know what? I'll just leave it at that. I won't discuss it any further in conference. All right, so this is actually the program that I've been the host of for, this is the 12th year now. Health in Harlem on WHCR 90.3 FM. We broadcast every Thursday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. And initially, this is a project, a joint partnership between Harlem Hospital and Lincoln Hospital. It contributed funds to underwrite a radio program on WHCR. My mentor slash surrogate mom slash friend, Miss Gloria Thomas, who is no longer with us, actually got this started and invited me on. She knew I was interested in medicine. Long story short, I became the host of the program. And so this is something I've been doing each and every week for the last 11 years, a lot of fun. We talk about topics, everything from diabetes, hypertension, we talk about mental illness. We even had a holiday series in which leading up to the holidays, we would talk about, okay, how do you get through the holidays and maintain your healthy lifestyle, right? How do you make sure that we even had the hospital police, for instance, from Harlem Hospital come in and talk about how to safeguard yourself when you're out shopping, making sure you don't get ripped off, making sure that your identity isn't stolen, how to safeguard your home and getting fire retardant trees and making sure that your family is safe, smoke detectors, and, smoke alarms, all of those things. So we address a very varied amount of topics. Previous guests we've had the Spirit of Hope cancer survivors. We had Alan Aviles, the former CEO of the Health in the Hospital, New York City Health in the Hospitals Corporation. Number of guests, but this is how I do it. And it's a lot of fun, provides an outlet for me, but also a way to educate the community. These are a few of our interns and my co-host, Giorgio Maloof, which we actually have a brand new team sort of doing this each and every week. And this is a study from Malawi actually talking about public engagement through radio, right? And in places that are, so these environments that have a lack of resources, this is something that is crucial in terms of changing the health outcomes of communities. And they actually found that, for instance, individuals with meningitis were actually responding earlier after a program that they aired talking about the signs and symptoms of meningitis, also vaccination campaigns, and they've seen a decrease in the rates of meningitis cases, bacterial meningitis cases. And one of the things that they did was they actually surveyed the community to talk about their needs as far as what needs to be talked about, and found that there were deficiencies as far as their knowledge of research, right? Clinical trials, the importance of clinical trials, why you should or should not participate in clinical trials, also vaccines and vaccine efficacy, sort of dispelling certain myths and misconceptions about pharmacologic therapies. And this is the lead producer and Philip Business. He's a big personality, big TV personality in Malawi, and they actually have them actually working with the station to promote these things. And actually, this is the best time right now because community radio is actually exploding here in the U.S. This is sort of, I would say, maybe the golden age, and a good time that if you're interested in doing this is the best time to really get involved. A lot of resources out there that you can take part in, and I know this is probably your question, right? Well, how do I get involved with these things? Well, we actually have online resources. The BBC Academy, in partnership with Creative Skill Set, actually has online courses that you can engage in that give you knowledge in broadcast media, right? So everything from podcasting to radio development, radio show development, how to interview an individual, how to be an interviewee. So all of these resources are available. We also have Brick right here in Brooklyn, across the street from BAM, where you can actually take courses on everything from web development, how to use the video equipment here, and this is actually low cost or free, a lot of the courses. And then ultimately they'll get you on the New York City cable access channels to sort of have your regular programming once you take all the courses and you actually put your project together. And then finally, we actually have right here at SUNY Downstate the Biomedical Communications Office, with which we have a studio right here in the Health Science Education building. And they actually will work with you to put together a program. This is actually Dr. Salifu, a program that they were just working on promoting the kidney transplant program here at SUNY Downstate. And they were actually in the process of editing this while I was actually there in the control room with them. And I don't know, man, I couldn't believe it though, that this is right here at SUNY Downstate, right? These resources that we can use for educating our community. So this stuff is here at our disposal, and we can take advantage of it. If you want more information, I can definitely reach out to me and I can get that to you. So definitely opportunities for us. Now, if you are more into the blog scene, right, this is a big deal because this is where we can really confront a lot of the misinformation that we have out there. And you can see that a lot of health blogs out there, but only 43% of physician writers, 90% of physicians use social media, but only 65% for professional reasons, including patient care and education. These are just some examples. Dr. Leslie Greenberg's blog, she talks about some patient care, patient education topics, but she does talk sometimes internally, right? Which there's a lot of dialogue amongst us. But occasionally she'll have things that are patient-oriented as far as health education. But we have Dr. Jen Gunter, who is really just head-on and confronting the goop, in-goop health folks, the anti-vaxxers, these sort of campaigns or by Goop about coffee enemas. I don't know if anybody's heard about this, but they're perforating people's colons with this. And she is an OBGYN that has a blog that she runs weekly, and she is actually confronting these things head on, putting her evidence there, and sort of educating the public about these things. And so why blog? One, it can make you happy, right? It can be fun depending on what you're into. Also, it's an opportunity to network and engage others. You can also spark new ideas and new interests coming from this. And finally, you can actually get paid from it. We could talk about that another time. And how to get started, think of something to blog about, right? So Adam Gutenberg likes to eat, he likes talks. Maybe talks, tales, I don't know. Or baking with Bloomy, I don't know, something big. So domain, but one thing that you'll need is a domain name, or the first thing is to choose domain name and also a platform, which there are many, we'll talk about that, and also hosting options, whether you're going to host it yourself or if you're going to engage a free service. And then finally, you design your blog and then grow and extend your blog, which includes add-ons and plugins. But some tips, don't give up, right? Because initially it can be very difficult getting the topics out, writing, or just writing in general. You need to be consistent, so if you're gonna post weekly, you gotta post weekly. Or if you're gonna do bi-weekly, then you have to be on point and making sure that you're posting regularly. because your followers will look for that. And then finally, guest blogging, so being on other people's blogs, sort of commenting on other individuals' blogs, that'll get your name out there and get you successful. These are just different hosting services and platforms that you can use. WordPress.org is the most popular. Don't confuse it with WordPress.com, a little bit different, and that WordPress.com is free. So you have less autonomy, less control over that platform. Just in the interest of time, we're going to move on. You have Squarespace, which is similar, but also this is going to be a platform in which you have more control, more autonomy. Bloggers, typically you are not in control. It's not your domain name, so it's going to be a little different. They can shut you down at any time. That's one of the disadvantages. Finally, we have Tumblr, which is kind of like a hybrid of a blog and just being sort of social media. Yes? Sorry. So that's pretty much it. Damage control, as far as what we can do, right, we need to become trolls. So when we see misinformation out there, we need to be commenting on those things and referring people to proper information, right, to information that is grounded in science and will lead to well-being. And finally, we have this organization, Health on the Net Foundation, which actually does sort of policing and looking at various sites with health information, or not health information, but health education to determine whether or not this is something that is potentially useful for individuals. So they'll look at whether or not there's conflict of interest, who is funded by, also whether or not they have their references listed, and if they do comply with those things, they'll give them this sort of badge of honor on that site that alerts the individual that, okay, this is possibly useful information. I think we need to take it a little bit further than that and actually educate patients to evaluate these sites for accuracy. The authority, right, where is it coming from? Is it from a university or is this from some commercial organization? Also, whether or not there's evidence of bias or objectivity, timeliness and coverage. And hopefully we can get to a point where we have a system or a body that goes through and actually grades these, just like we have level of evidence grades for the various publications that we peruse. Hopefully we can do that with health education. And I'll wrap up there. Questions, comments, concerns? I know we went fast.